What's up, chumbags? Welcome back to the HQ. My name is Sri, and today I'm joined by Alexa for something very different. I've literally never done this before on the channel, but I'm pretty excited to do it. As some of you guys know, I do a little bit of writing on the side, a little bit of typing on the computers. And it's been a while. The last story I published was in 2023. At the start of 2023, I published The Lesser Evil, a cyberpunk novella.
Cyberpunk noir novella.
And since then, I have not really flexed those creative muscles. So recently, Alexa and I did a writing contest where we were given a week, 7 days, to write a 1,000 to 3,000 word short story based on 1 of 5 prompts. And so I went with the prompt that I felt to me the easiest, which was to write a story. Well, actually, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say what the prompt is. If you want to find out what the prompt is, you can click the link in the description below and check out the full episode over on CHUMBAG TV, because that's where the real content is. You'll see us going through, both Alexa and me separately, going through our own turmoils as we try to get our stories written. And of course, since Alexa is here, I have to say, Alexa also, we did a reading of her story, and you can check that out over on her channel.
Wow.
So with that said, this one's going to be a little bit different. Alexa's story, we kind of both went back and forth. For this one, I'm going to do the reading. I want you and Alexa to just kind of absorb it. Alexa does have a copy right here.
I do, a fancy copy that I made.
Yeah. Make it, showing my just printer papers up. But this is 2,300 words. And it's a bit of a different story, but I hope you guys enjoy it. So with that said, I'm also going to try to autocorrect any mistakes I make along the way, which is also one of the reasons why I'm reading it as well. And again, I haven't done this before, so we'll see how this goes. But with that said, Alexa, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Enter the Valley of Dreams.
I'm ready.
It's not that. This is, I'll say specifically the title. Not the title I had in mind. I had no title in mind, but to submit the story, you had to have a title.
That's why my title is Nate the Great 143. So, like, I had no ideas for a title. And well, actually, I had a different initial title I forgot to talk about, but this is your video now.
Yeah. Nope. You can't talk about it.
I can't say anything about me.
Nothing else. Yeah. All right. Here we go. The Valley was a microcosm of the American dream. With a population of just over 40,000 people, Larkspur Valley was home to both the foreign haves and the homegrown have-nots. It was a community on the edge of peace, waiting for someone to give it a little push. Kyle Matthews was born in the valley. Its rocky walls held all his memories. He was an athletic kid with a passion for sports that ran in the family. His father, Greg Matthews, took the state team to nationals, and everyone who watched Kyle's Little League games saw a bright baseball career in his future. In the summer before his freshman year at Larkspur Valley High, Kyle was out on Lake Sable with a few friends. He and Riley Anderson, the outfielder on his Little League team, were on the final lap of the lake, holding onto the tandem tube that was gliding along the water surface behind the boat. Charlie, Riley's older brother, was driving their dad's boat in between swigs of beer and jerked the wheel too far on the last turn. The tube bounced off the wake before going airborne. Riley was launched into the air and hit the water head first. A childhood on the lake had prepared him to recover quickly from the impact. Kyle was not so lucky. Kyle was heavier than Riley and didn't get much air. Instead, his body got flung across the water like a flat rock. His left leg slapped the hard surface of the lake and was pulled to the side at the knee before snapping back into place. Kyle felt the snap and knew immediately that something had gone very wrong. An MRI revealed the damage, a complete tear of his anterior cruciate ligament. When can we get him into surgery? Greg Matthews asked the doctor. The school year is starting soon, and Kyle needs to begin training for the season. That's what I wanted to discuss with you. Normally, we'd get him scheduled in right away. However, Kyle also bruised his medial collateral ligament. What does that mean? Well, the surgery is only recommended on the MCL for severe tears. Because Kyle only bruised it, the ligament will heal on its own. However, we have to wait for it to heal first before we can perform the surgery on the ACL. Okay, Greg said, confused. How long will that be? It took 4 weeks for Kyle to be ready for surgery, which took him right into the start of freshman year of high school. He spent the first few weeks out of school recovering from the surgery, and then the next few weeks with a cast and crutches. The 8th grade star athlete was a 9th grade nobody. Due to the wait from
Bars.
injury to surgery, Kyle lost muscle mass on his left leg. He didn't make the team that year, nor any year after. His baseball career was over before it began. During his sophomore year, while Riley was busy training, Kyle and Charlie became friends. Charlie wasn't much of an academic either and was going to trade school to become an electrician. I just can't just sit there and have a bunch of useless crap shoveled down my throat, Charlie would say. Like, why the fuck would I need the Pythagorean theorem bullshit? Kyle spent
It's a very real high school discussion.
Kyle spent a lot of time shooting hoops with Charlie, listening to his drunk rambles. Every grand ambition, fragmented truth, and radical theory in Charlie's head wormed into Kyle's brain. The B's Kyle used to get on his report card became C's, D's, and, senior year, even an F. The grades matched Kyle's mental spiral. By his junior year, Kyle's parents were so focused on the rising football star that their youngest son was becoming that they had forgotten about their firstborn. During the Thanksgiving that year, Charlie ran away from home after an exceptionally nasty argument with his parents. He messaged Kyle to meet him at the basketball courts, and Kyle managed to sneak out without much trouble. I'm 18 now, an adult, he said. He had said to Kyle. I don't have to listen to their lectures all day. What are you going to do now? Or what are you going to do? Get the hell out of this town. I stole some money from my dad's stash, and I'm going to take the next bus to anywhere, tonight. What are you going to do? Make a name for myself. I was born a nobody, but I won't die that way. And neither should you, Kyle. You and me are the same. We have too much potential for this shitty little town. Those words were burned into Kyle's mind, melting through the winter chill that had seeped into his bones that night. The clock struck midnight as Kyle quietly put the mesh back onto his window. The house was quiet, but his head was buzzing. He got no sleep that night. All he could think about was where Charlie was, how far he had made it, not knowing that no one from the valley would ever see him again.
Oh, shit.
A year later, Kyle's next big influence came in the form of Billy Bradshaw, the super senior. His family had been among the first to settle in the valley, and in his mind, that pretty much made him royalty. The first time Kyle met Billy was on the bus home from school. Billy's hand-me-down Corolla was in the shop, and he had to take the bus home. He sat in the back, playing with a tennis ball, and getting mean glares from the bus driver. Billy had a brother, Bernard, who was 5 years younger and was taking special education classes at Valley High. He liked to sit near the front of the bus, usually in the row behind the driver, and stare out the window, occasionally muttering to himself. On that ride home, a few kids on the bus, unaware of Billy's presence, threw wads of paper at Bernard while the bus driver wasn't looking. Bonus points for anyone who managed to hit his head. Billy dropped the tennis ball and stood up. No standing while the bus is moving, yelled the bus driver. Billy ignored her. He walked over to the paper throwers, pushed one of them down into the seat, and slapped him so hard that the kid immediately started crying. Billy was suspended for 2 weeks, but he did finally end up finally graduating. It was his third go-around of 12th grade.
Damn.
Kyle and Billy got close during the summer after graduation. While most of the students had gotten into out-of-town colleges, the two of them were going to Valley Community College, lovingly called Valco. Even though college was in the valley, Kyle and Billy moved out of their parents' houses that fall and into a 2-bedroom apartment next to campus. The newfound freedom of college life had a massive impact on Kyle. With no curfews to adhere to, the two of them were out late each night, bouncing from party to party, and went to class whenever they woke up. A couple of weeks into the semester, Billy got Kyle a job at the pizzeria his uncle owned. Minimum work for minimum wage. One of the dishwashers, Polly, was a Valley High alum and also happened to be the school's biggest pot dealer. Billy would spend a fourth of his paycheck every week buying weed from Polly. If Billy didn't care for school before, then he was downright against it after that. He stopped attending classes, choosing to spend time getting high and jamming out in his room. Needless to say, the influence rubbed off on Kyle. He had smoked before, but only a puff or two on occasion. Living with Billy, the smoke clouds never faded. The smell of burning marijuana was so strong, even from the hallway, that they would have gone to jail if not for the fact that the entire apartment building was filled with college students who were more jealous than upset. The tipping point was in the last week of their senior year. Kyle was lying in bed after his penultimate final, an advanced algebra exam that he already knew he had failed, when Billy knocked on his door. "Hey, man," Billy called out from the hall. "I have something to make you feel better." It seemed Polly sold more than just pot, and when Kyle opened his bedroom door, he saw Billy holding a baggie of white powder with a smile on his face. That was 2 years ago. Kyle was now 21, still working at the pizzeria, and no longer going to school. His parents, having sent the youngest to college, had attempted to reach out a few times, but Kyle stopped answering their calls. Billy had overdosed twice on a cocktail of drugs, and his parents had checked him into rehab. Now, Kyle was truly alone, with no human relationships to ground him. He still bought drugs from Polly, and on this particular night, he had brought a strong batch of psychedelic mushrooms. The sky was cloudless as he got out of his car, and he took in a deep breath before tossing a fistful of dried shrooms into his mouth. He let them soak on his tongue as he sat on top of Billy's old car, looking up at the stars. Once the stars began to swim across his vision, he slid off the hood and walked into Foxglove Woods. He wandered the forest. All sense of fear was lost with the light when he felt a sudden pressure on his mind, as if his brain was caught in a clamp. It pulled his gaze in the direction of a shape in the darkness ahead. He followed it absently until he found himself approaching an old wood cabin. Weather-beaten logs held up a short roof. There were no windows, just a dark wooden door with a golden knob. It was ice cold to the touch despite the late summer heat. Not that Kyle noticed as he twisted the handle and pushed the door open. Through the darkness, two tiny orbs of light peered back at him, seemingly miles away, yet still close enough to touch. Kyle stepped inside and didn't notice the door quietly closed behind him. Star, star, star.
Okay.
Fred Mason came to the United States from South Africa with $100 to his name. He was 22 years old at the time. With hefty grants and tips from the local bar he worked part-time at, he was able to earn his master's in computer science and began network design at the company where he would later meet his wife. Sandra worked in the customer service department, but the two of them would run into each other every day in the cafeteria. Pleasantries turned into pleasant chats, which later blossomed into coffee runs and, once Fred made sure it was within the bounds of the HR handbook, dinner dates. 2 years after their first date, they got married, and 2 years after that, they had Elijah. That was nearly 18 years ago, and the couple reminisced about their early dates over a few glasses of wine. They had just shipped their only son off to college the week prior, and though the empty nest felt cold without Elijah, they were enjoying focusing on each other. On Monday, Fred brought home a beautiful bouquet of sunflowers for Sandra. On Thursday, they went out on their first movie date since Elijah was in 4th grade, which they had to leave halfway through when the babysitter called to tell them that their son wouldn't stop throwing up. Fred and Sandra were in bed, watching TV and talking about a meeting Fred was nervous about, when Spots nudged the bathroom door open. "Looks like someone needs to go out again," Sandra said. With an exaggerated sigh, Fred rolled out of bed and slipped on his bathrobe. Spots was a 13-year-old Jack Russell Terrier who was named by Elijah for the dotted pattern on his fur. He was an old man now and often required being let out 2 times a night to relieve himself. The Mason house was at the edge of the development. At nearly 5,000 square feet, it cost a pretty penny to build, but they liked the privacy. The backyard melted into the woods that covered much of the mountains around Larkspur Valley, and on nights like this, a cool breeze washed over the house. Fred's eyes got heavy as he felt the air on his skin, and he leaned on the deck railing as he waited for the old dog to do his business. There was a distant scream in the distance from somewhere deep within the forest, and Fred recognized it as the screech of a mountain lion. He stared out at the tree line for any movement, but everything was still. Even the breeze had died down. Spots clambered his way up the stairs, and Fred let him in. He slid the door shut behind him and returned to bed to find Sandra fast asleep. He smiled to himself at her soft snore and tucked himself in beside her. Fred was a good man. He followed the law. He volunteered at the YMCA every summer. He always rounded his total up for charity. His one flaw was his absent-mindedness. He'd be so distracted by one thing he would forget to do another. The idea of dessert was so appetizing he would forget to look at the appetizers. He would be so focused on sealing the envelope, he'd forget to put the letter in first. On Friday night, once he had let Spot back in for the second time, with his half-awake mind nagging him about the project review on Monday, he went to bed without realizing that he had not locked the back door. At 3:15 in the morning, the door slid quietly open. Kyle entered the Mason house, and so began the American Nightmare. And that's it.
That's dope. That was really good.
You like it?
I liked it a lot.
Whew, that was a lot of reading.
That was a lot. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Proud of you for writing it and reading it, Suri.
Yeah, there you go. It's 2,300 something words. Where the prompt is, and I'll say it now because if you made it this far, you deserve to know. It's an ending where the character's fate is uncertain.
Yeah, I want more info about this ending. Please don't make it certain for me. And
Just clarify it a little bit.
Can we get some clarifications here?
Yeah. No, this is an interesting story. I think this one that. Again, you can watch the full episode over on CHUMBAG TV to kind of see my thoughts and kind of how it developed. But I think there are ways I could continue this story. It would go in a different direction. But I think, if we're kind of comparing it to my previous work, I think, you're wearing the Nightmare from the Deep shirt. I would say this is the prologue of the story. So. We'll see if
I'd say the 3 stars is when it would become like no longer a prologue is kind of
this is
the full prologue.
That's all one. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
okay, I can see it.
So we'll see how it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the reading. Alexa, just your first before we, what do you think? Blind reading it or blind hearing it for the first time, and minus my occasional flub here or there where I messed up a word or two. I think there's definitely times as I was reading it myself, I was like, oh, that word needs to be crossed. That word can
tweet. Yeah, sometimes I wasn't sure if you were purposely reading the wrong word or like purposely or just accidentally. I think overall it was really good.
Thank you. I was just looking for compliments, I guess. From the way you're
like the characters were well developed. There's a couple, I gave my little few reactions as we were reading. Interesting path it went down. Interesting to see, a few moments in it. Obviously the ACL tear.
Yeah.
So that was interesting to see you writing that down in a different way, obviously.
Yeah.
But also very similar.
Different context.
Yeah. And there's a couple, other moments that I could see draw from different things about your life that I know about. And like the American Nightmare portion.
Yeah.
But it did leave me immediately going, what does he mean by American Nightmare? Like I can think of multiple things that could translate into.
Right.
Being an American. But I really just want to call out one thing that I really loved, and it was Fred was a good man. He followed the law. He volunteered at YMCA every summer, and he always rounded up his total for charity. That line just cracked me up a bit. I didn't obviously laugh, but because I didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah. But I could think I smiled when you said it because I didn't want to be loud. Whereas you're that close to the end of the story.
Yeah.
But it just really tickled me, I guess is better than cracked me up because I did not laugh. But because it's just the idea of it. You immediately know who he is, though. It's those sort of things that I really like about reading your work, overall, is you have these small throwaway lines that just add so much impact. It's almost like Sukumar, the director, as we were talking about Pushpa. You said that exact line about Sukumar
I think
in our Pushpa 2 review. So as I was saying, I was like, this feels familiar. But that's one of the things that you're really good at as well. And that's one of my favorite things to see in movies, in books, is the throwaway lines that add so much impact into who the character is, what the situation is, etc. And I think that you just have this innate ability to be able to do that. And it's very impressive. And it makes why I continue to edit your books for free. Because then I get to read them.
Sweet. Yeah, no, thank you very much. I wasn't hoping for that deep of compliments, but I'll take it. I hope you guys enjoyed this reading. Again, it's a totally different thing for this channel.
Before you go out,
sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to say, so rereading it through for the first time, probably fully, post submission.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I feel good. I think that the point here that I was really struggling with the story was it's and I said this so many times, I think, in my kind of personal diaries. But it's a lot of story that's packed into 2,300 words. There's
you did a good job condensing
so much
it.
about Kyle, and so I was so worried about will that have, will that come through? Will feel like it's too much? And I don't want it to feel where you're okay. I understand this guy, but I don't give a shit. I didn't want that to be the ultimate thing. And so it was really kind of that was what I was kind of most worried about. But I think I'm pretty happy in the end with, at least it's not cold. It doesn't feel cold entirely, and so that's that. I'm happy with that. And
your writing rarely feels cold, I'll say.
Thank you. I was cold writing it, but that's a different.
That's a winter time.
Yeah. And I think for me the most interesting thing, kind of putting this together, I think it was specifically in this short story that I felt it was. I think going back, all the stories I've written, some that I haven't even published yet, but Nightmare from the Deep, The Witching Hour, The Lesser Evil. I think there's so much of it that is what's going on in my mind currently that I just put into the story.
Yeah.
And so this one feels, because it's so condensed, it feels the most like, oh, of course this is in there. Of course this is in there.
Mm-hmm. Like, I felt that way because obviously we talk a lot. So I knew a lot of those connections. I'm sure there's even one or two I didn't know. But there was a lot of times where I was like, oh, I see why. Obviously, this is why he wrote this. Obviously, where it connects. But finish your thought. I won't keep complimenting you.
I wrote threads because I like to overthink my stories a lot, and I'm always curious about. Even after I finished the last line, I'm like, okay, where would this go, and how would I tell this story? And I think I was able to kind of, I don't want to say naturally or during the writing process, but there are threads that I've dropped in this story that I could later on pick up if I wanted to continue the story. But again, that's in your hands. And so if you want to see,
everyone comment down below right now. Full copy. I want a full version of it. Sri, finish the book now.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
angry emojis. This is what I want.
And maybe a medal emoji, applause emoji would be good. I appreciate it as well.
Only if you finish the full story.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you what you need to do to get the medal.
Okay. All right. Applause emoji then.
Okay, you can get applause.
I'll take applause emojis. But with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. This was interesting. If you want to see more like this, obviously let us know. Check out Alexa's video down in the description to see her story as well. And it has a fun twist at the end, so I'd recommend checking it out. But with that said, as always, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, have a good night, a good morning, and a damn good time.